Hi folks, it's Chris here with the Fanboy vs. Sparring edition, doing a little retrospective this week. We missed a show this week, and well, there wasn't a heck of a lot out last week that I figured was really worth talking about. So I wanted to do this for a little while, and given what's coming up in the next week, I think this is the perfect time to do it. We're going to talk a little today about Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. Now, if you listen to Fanboy Versus, if you watch the show on YouTube or Ustream, you'll know that I'm a big proponent of Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, and that I've turned a lot of the guys, well, no, most of the guys on the show were reading it already, but certainly I know I've successfully turned a few opinions, turned a few heads towards Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, and the reason for that is that it's some of the best goddamn Fantastic Four ever. Now, I'm a big Fantastic Four fan. Fantastic Four are my favourite superheroes. Not always my favourite book, but under Jonathan Hickman, I can safely say this is one of the books that I just look forward to every month. And with the big shake-ups that are happening in it right now, I want to go back and take a couple minutes today just for this Sparring edition to look over it for you, perhaps turn your head towards it if you haven't already. Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, I keep saying that phrase an awful lot, is presently available in 4 trade paperbacks from your, well, no, that's actually not quite accurate. I believe it's 3 trade paperbacks and a hardcover with a 4th paperback to come in the next month or so. Okay, so it is all available in collected format one way or the other. Jonathan has been writing Fantastic Four for about a year and a half now. 19 issues we have so far. And I'm always hesitant to use the word fantastic to describe the Fantastic Four because there's a sense of patness about that, you know, it's there in the name. But he brings an air of wonder and big ideas, not necessarily cosmic ideas, although there are some of those, but it's just an air of the fantastic is truly the phrase that comes to mind most easily to describe some of the things he's doing. He's followed on Mark Millar's run, which lasted a while beforehand, and unfortunately didn't propel the Fantastic Four into the heights of fame that everybody really figured it would, because Mark Millar and Brian Hitch. But I think the contrast is very apparent, because Mark Millar is a big ideas and moment man as well. But there's very rarely a through line or any follow through with Mark Millar's big, smart, witty ideas. But Hickman has done what a lot of comic book authors today don't do, which is that he has not come onto the book and decided to start afresh with his own thing and begin his own story afresh, taking nothing that went before to heed. He has very deliberately and very specifically picked up where Millar left off with his story and has drawn upon any elements that Millar left behind him, and in a way highlighted what makes him so much better at this. Where Millar gave Valeria, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman's daughter, 3-year-old daughter, super intelligence, he used it as a deus ex machina to solve problems every once in a while, but ultimately just led to her saying a lot of long, complicated sentences that were funny to hear come out of the mouth of a child. Under Jonathan Hickman, she has become a rather disturbed character that it's hard to get a full read on. We're seeing a character with the intellectual maturity of a genius, but the emotional maturity of a child, and somebody who is making very different and very dark decisions compared to her own father, and plot threads that haven't come to their full conclusion yet. You know, Mark Millar presents us a story where time travelers from the future use the corpse of Galactus to power their time machine. A big, crazy idea, but nothing comes of it. But under Hickman, Galactus comes to Earth and goes, "Hey, what the hell is this noise? What are you doing with my corpse?" And then he tries to destroy the planet that the time travelers came back in time and now live on. Following through on these big ideas, real follow through that gives these cosmic, wide-ranging ideas more grounding in the ongoing story. And ongoing is a way that definitely has to sum this up, because while it's available in 4 collections, Hickman's Fantastic Four is something to be experienced month on month, serialized in its individual issues. As much as a lot of the comic book industry is leaning towards graphic novels and writing for the graphic novel. Somebody like Miller or Bendis are people who take a story, split it up into 6 chunks, present each of those chunks in an issue. That makes a nice graphic novel. Hickman's Fantastic Four couldn't give less of a crap about that. It is presenting 1 and 2 and 3 part stories with no view to how they may fall into a collection. The very fact that they've taken 4 volumes to collect only 19 issues, whereas under another writer that would probably have made it into 3, illustrates the way that that is not a consideration here. This is a thing that you are supposed to experience in pieces, as it goes, building before you, not in these solid chunks of trade paperbacks. And as much as the industry is changing, I just love how that remains a constant with this comic. That's the curmudgeon in me, fighting, defying the changing, the shifting nature of the industry. But Fantastic Four serves me that way, and you know, I would never want it to change. The first volume, for instance, the first volume collects a 3-parter and 2 one-shots. The second volume is 4 one-shots with an overarching theme. The third volume is a 2-parter and 2 one-shots. And the final volume is the much publicized story that, if you know anything about Fantastic Four at all from the last couple of months, that leads to the death of one of the team members, is called 3, and that's a 6-parter. But it's this structure that keeps me glued to it, because when, you simply don't see comics that tell a complete story in 1 issue very often anymore. It is falling out of fondness. But much more to the point, while it may be presented as a 1 or a 2-part story or a 3-part, whatever, everything that happens is part of a much larger tapestry, a very long game that Hickman is playing with this title. That from the first issue to the very last issue of his run, from the first issue to the last issue, and it is presented as the last issue. We'll get to that in a minute. There's a plot thread in both of those. A lot of this revolves around Reed Richards. I mean, Hickman had viewed some of the troubles that Fantastic Four had before was the excessive focus on Reed because Reed had been put through the ringer during Civil War, and Dwayne McDuffie did a pretty nice job of fixing some of the bad work Straczynski did with Reed during Civil War. But, well, being honest, the first story of Hickman's Fantastic Four is called Solve Everything. And if that doesn't have a metatextual meaning, I don't know what does. But there are seeds planted in these issues that sprout and spread through all the others. And it's not done yet. As much as that may be advertised as the last issue, there are threads still in motion that have not fully bloomed yet, which we're watching grow in a sequential, serialized way that I just don't think you can get the full benefit if you're reading it in graphic novel format. This is a comic to be experienced month on month. Artistically, it's a beautiful book as well, with Dale Eaglesham starting it off and Steve Epting currently drawing it at the moment. Eaglesham brought a real... I mean, I was sad to see Eaglesham go after a while, but he brought a real Kirby-esque quality to the artwork that I was think defined some of the best Fantastic Four artwork. It's not all fantastic. There's a Duff issue or two in there. There's an issue where the Thing and the Human Torch go to New World. It's just kind of weird and a little bit didn't work for me. There's another one about Arcade and the Impossible Man that I still don't really know what the point of was. Thematically, and in terms of what they plant that will grow into stories in the future, I see why the issues exist, but, as isolated stories, which is how I like to try and view these one-shots, because they're being presented to me as an isolated thing once a month, which is part of the appeal of the whole thing. They weren't so good, And Neil Edwards was the artist who would fill in between Eaglesham and Epting, and tried to be Brian Hitch light, and it just didn't work with some truly heinous expressions that no. And the reason I'm doing this retrospective now is that Fantastic Four is changing. Next week, this week, coming, 23rd of March, FF #1 launches, following the death that ended the series. The book is relaunching as FF #1 with Spider-Man on the team. But it's much more than just that. All the ideas that have been put in motion are still going forward. There are many questions, and there is still a huge long game plot that is yet to fully flower here that I can't wait for. And I quite honestly haven't been this excited for the launch of a new comic in an awfully long time. And the Fantastic Four are one of those groups, one of those comics, that is always just there and is rarely ever the subject of a lot of attention. Mark Waid's run got a fair bit of attention back when it happened. But, you know, Brian Hitch and Mark Miller failed to truly propel the book to stardom as it was hoped they would because they're big name creators. But Hickman's run, well, we'll find out when FF #1 launches and we'll see what the numbers are on it, but Hickman's run has got something, such good word of mouth. This is not a book where everybody, you know, where all the hype is saying, all of the hype machines are telling you to read it, you know. This is a book where the genuine word of mouth amongst fans and readers has spread to draw people in to look at this comic because it is that good. It is wonderful, high concept stuff by an author who truly gets these characters like few before him in recent memory truly have. To do such great character-based stuff and great far-reaching, mind-bending, fantastical concepts that is just some of the best the book has ever been, certainly in the length of time that I've been reading it. And with FF #1 coming up next month, I just really hope that you'll all join me in reading and enjoying the next stage of the ongoing story of Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. Thanks for your time.